Surviving temptations and negative influences is difficult for all. However, for youth from minority populations, high school life turns into a living hell. Here, we explore a youth's perspective and try to extract lessons for youth and their parents on what to expect, what to do, and what to avoid to survive high school years. Assalamu alaikum, Isha.
Walaikum salam.
How are you?
Good, alhamdulillah.
Alright, so today we are going to talk about bullying and how minority kids feel at school. And this episode is particularly for youth as well as their parents, right? And the reason that you're here today is because you're one of my 6 children, but you're the most observant and you have been helping other children at school who are victims of bullying. That's why I just wanted to listen to you so that we have something from your experience to share with parents and youth, how to deal with the stress and all those kinds of things in high school in particular, right? So let's begin with the elementary school. So for the minority kids, how is it to be in the elementary school to begin with, and do they face similar challenges as they face in the high school, or is it different?
It's different for elementary versus high school, and some of the challenges we faced, us being in a predominantly white neighborhood in our school, is that in our schools there was a very small, almost invisible population of minority groups, like people of color or people that wear a scarf or a hijab. And so it would make us feel as though we're not normal, or a lot of kids would feel that they're not normal, that they don't fit in, etc.
So what kind of effects does it leave on children's mind, and how do they carry that baggage with them into when they go into the high school?
So for kids, they would want to fit in, and they want to fit in because of the low self-esteem. They're not strong on who they are.
What is it that you think that parents can do to help address the situation?
I think a big role for parents is to educate their children, because the schools are not going to educate the children on their background. So it's for parents to educate the children on their background, where they're from, what they believe, what are their faiths and values, and instill a very strong who into them, so that they know who they are and what they believe.
But most importantly, why do they do certain things in a certain way, right? So the more they inculcate that strong faith in the kids, that whatever they're asked to do, like for instance wearing the hijab or whatever, right, that's not because of the parents or not because of the culture or not because of the traditions, but because of their faith, right? So if they have that strong foundation from the elementary school, they won't face those kinds of challenges. All right, so let's move on to the high school, right? So what happens when they go to the high school?
So in high school, it's drastically different than elementary school, because in high school you have 4 different classes. You have to go to each class, different people in each classroom, different teachers in each classroom, 4 different teachers a day. There's not that direct and not the same amount of attention from the teacher
or supervision
in high school. And also there's grouping. So there's the cool kids, there's the popular kids, then there's the unpopular kids, there's there's that need to fit into one of the groups.
So what happens because of all these things?
So
they have different classes. So what? I would say so what, right? They have, instead of one class being in one class and one teacher, there are several classes. So
the thing is, you're exposed to more different types of people, and there's a more chance there's different people in each class, meaning that there could be there could be the school bullies. You could get bullied for, and I've seen a lot of the time people getting bullied for their hijab or their color. So
they're coming from the elementary school, they have low self-esteem, and they end up with several groups. Out of those groups, there could be bullies, and they start bullying them, and then what happens?
And then again, this leads to a low self-esteem and them wanting to fit in or be cool or be accepted.
So since they have low self-esteem, they try to fit in, right? To be with or like one of those groups, right? And so they're not accepted in those groups, or what? So they don't let them join those groups?
So getting into the popular group in high school, it's not as easy as it seems. But there's also the cool kids, there's the gangster kids who are also popular. Getting into those groups is very easy. They actually offer you drugs at school.
All right, so on the one hand, they're getting bullied. So they need some protection. They need to be part of a certain group, right? And then probably the ones who are doing drugs and all those kinds of things, they're considered as the cool crowd. So instead of ending up with the real good guys or real good groups, right? So because of the bullying and stress, so you mean that they end up with start hanging with the bad crowd?
And another factor for them leading into the cool kids crowd could also be it's usually a trigger that leads someone to that whole stress in their mind that, oh, I need to do something, I need to fit in, I need to be accepted by society. So it can also come from a teacher. Because there's I've seen a friend of mine, a teacher called her hijab a turban. And there's different names that they call for it. And also in class, sometimes they do experiments with in science with your hair. So they say, take a bit of your hair and look at your hair. And so for someone that's wearing a hijab, they can't take out their hair and look at their hair. So then they feel, oh no, like I'm not normal, I'm not like these people. And that leads them to want to take off their hijab or maybe just to fit in. It creates it's that trigger for the stress that I need to fit in, I need to be accepted. And so when they have that thing that I need to be accepted, that leads them to wanting to be cool. So again, that leads to the direction of the gangster group.
All right, so all those factors, like the teachers not being sensitive to the different culture, other kids in other groups and not welcoming and accepting a kid from the minority culture, and then bullying. So all those factors lead that person with low self-esteem to join the cool crowd, right? Or the wannabe gangs or whatever. So then what happens?
So of course, in the gangs, they're offered all these kinds of things like drugs, parties, which obviously is full of drugs and stuff like that. And they think, oh wow, look at this, I'm getting invited to parties, they're offering me drugs, they care about me. And so that's when they also start to detach from their family, because they feel like they found a safe place with these cool kids and these wannabe gangsters. So.
And meanwhile, the parents are in total darkness. They don't have a clue, right? That what's happening at school. So are there any signs that the parents could observe at that particular time, even if the kids are not telling them?
So one could be, obviously, if the child is becoming more and more distant. If the child comes home and just directly goes to locks themselves in their room, or just always wants to be with friends. I mean, it's not always these things, but these are a few signs that can make it more obvious. So
what is it that parents can do at a very early stage of this transition in a child's life?
So at the early stages, as a student, and I've seen friends' parents, so I would suggest for parents not to just bluntly go up to them and be like, and start assuming things like, you've done this, are you doing this? You know you're gonna end up in jail or or dead on the streets. They shouldn't do that, but they should be kind of more assertive. They shouldn't obviously tell them, I know you're doing this and it's okay, but they should kind of slowly, indirectly advise them or teach them, or maybe directly. But my point is that they should keep an open line of communication. They should be friendly, but also have that authority figure over them, but be friendly as well. So the student feels comfortable sharing things. And
all right, so everything is coming in stages, right? So a child starts going to high school. There, the environment is different. Then feels pressured. Then feels bullied, and then joins the cool crowd. Then started doing drugs and partying and all those kinds of things. At what point in time, or what factors lead to a child's leaving the family?
Yeah, so this is actually very common in high school. Is that, first of all, if you turn 16 years of age in Ontario, there's a law that allows anyone that is 16 years of age or older, like 16 years of age or older, to leave home without the consent of a parent. They could leave for 2 days. They could leave for 1 day. It's not like it's very rare for a kid to actually go, leave, have a job, have an apartment, and live on their own successfully. It's very rare. Majority of them leave for a few days. The parents call the police, my child's missing, and the police would tell them, like if the police has contact with the child can just say, oh, I'm 16 years of age, here's the law, you can't force me to go back home. Like they can't bring the child back home or bring the child to shelter because it's the law.
That's fine. So there's something wrong at the system level, right? So I agree. But again, this is kind of a progression, right? So a child goes from elementary school to high school. In the high school, the environment is different, the culture is different, everything is different. So he starts feeling under pressure, starts feeling bullied, and then wants to fit in. Other groups won't let him join. The easiest group to join is the bad guys, and when he starts hanging out with the bad guys, he's offered drugs, so she's offered drugs, and then from there partying and all those invitations to partying. So at which stage or what actually leads that child to leave home?
So for them, so what entices a child to leave home is mainly the idea that they think that their friends and their outside group is more caring. They feel as though they found a home, they found a safe place within them. And so they begin to feel like, oh, my family doesn't care about me, my family's nothing, and they start caring more about their friends who are they're surface nice.
But then some of the attraction could be in the drugs as well, right? Or no?
Yeah, they're offering them drugs. It's just like offering a child. It's
candies.
Like, it's like offering a child candies. So.
And so what other factors could lead to a child leaving his or her home?
Also, it's another thing that's appealing, again, comes from the system point of view, is first of all that you can leave home when you're 16 years of age. Nobody's stopping you. For people, I mean, everyone has rules and regulations at home. Kids just want to run from those. And another thing is if you leave home and you're under 18 and the CAS can give you a place to stay, the Children's Aid Society will give youth a place to stay. And where there's a few group homes, my friend was in one, where her curfew was she was allowed to stay out until 10 p.m. And they can't really ask questions, where exactly are you going? They don't ask questions, where exactly are you going? Who are you going with? They don't
so it's kind of freedom over there, right? So so you said about the system, 16 years old, then you can leave your home legally and no one can ask you to come back, right? That's fine. But what about the under 15? So for the under 16, so for the under 16, probably it's just the word of mouth, right? One child would tell another one and another would tell another one that if you want some freedom, then leave home. Right?
You can leave home, or you can make stories about your parents. You know, I had a friend of a friend who created a story about her family and created a scene, and they took her into a group home where there's obviously more freedom. So that's kind of now the child is on a tangent, right? So goes out of school, goes either to the shelter or the group home, or staying with the cool crowd. So what happens, for instance, that child doesn't end up going to the group home and starts living with those bad guys. So what's the kind of environment? What did you had a friend who ended up there, right? So did you hear from her what happens and what kind of life is that? So again, it's kind of like a friend of a friend had explained to me that she was there, and it's kind of just like a time pass life. You don't have goals, you don't have achievements, you're kind of numb to everything else. It's not, whereas when you're living with your family, you have more sense, you're sensualizing everything, if that's the right word to use. Like you can feel for others, you you care about your parents, you care about your siblings, and you have a goal, you're chasing a goal, you're chasing a dream, you know, you have a purpose in life. There, from her, I heard it's just numb. You're just chasing the next party, the next big event, or it could be the next drug. It's different for everyone.
Hakuna
So it's just
Matata.
kind of...
Hakuna Matata.
So,
It's like Hakuna Matata.
yeah, like no worries.
Yeah, it means no worries.
But again, you can't live with that no worries life forever, because you're gonna end up like, where are you gonna end up? Most of these people, they don't go to school. They don't have goals, so they're not going anywhere.
So what factors could, like, now a child is on a tangent, he ends up either in the group homes or in the drug dens. So what can the system or what can the parents do to bring their child back to normal?
So I've seen a lot of, like, I know there's a lot of stuff from the community point of view when a child has fallen into the ditch. There's U-turn, there's Rito woodworkers, there's lots of services for children who have already fallen, but I don't think that services are very helpful at all. When it comes to that, because they're only helpful when the child realizes, yeah, you know what, I want to start getting better.
If the child decides to make a U-turn, then these services are helpful.
Yeah.
But when they are there, right, then no service can help them.
Yeah.
So what is it that can help them make that U-turn? Of course, when they make a U-turn, then U-turn is there, and Read Over Addiction Center and all those kinds of things are there. But when they are in the ditch, right, what can pull them out? What is it? What mechanism? Did you hear from anyone that what triggers that return?
Yeah. So I had a friend of a friend again, and with her, I mean, it's a different case with everyone. For some people, it's just it's a big shock. Again, it's another trauma that wakes them up. That makes them realize, what am I doing? For some people, it's just because they get to the point in life where they're just too late, and that's when they realize. But for this friend in particular, so I have two different friends. So one friend, she was a Muslim, but her parents were immigrants, and so her parents didn't teach her. She didn't have a strong knowledge of Islam in the first place. I knew her pretty well. She was a very good friend of mine, and she didn't have that knowledge of Islam. She didn't. I don't think she even knew what all of our prophets' names were, let alone what her purpose is, who is Allah really, and all of those things. So she didn't have that education on Islam, on her faith in the first place. And so her today, I still don't know where she is, but I know she's still down that road. I think she's even over 18 now, maybe living in a shelter home or something. Like, you can't live in group homes forever, so she's probably in a shelter, homeless or something. I'm sure of it. I'm sure of that. And I have another friend who, she was also a Muslim. She was a hijabi, but she was a hijab wearer. But the difference was her parents were very intelligent, so they taught her. She knew who's Allah. She believed in Allah. She had that strong faith in her. So when she was a child, her parents did a good job of instilling that faith in her. So no matter if she goes astray, no matter if she forgets it, or sometimes lost her conscious, I guess you could say, for a few years, she did end up coming back. And how did she end up coming back? Is that her parents kept an open line of communication with her. So they weren't abrasive, saying that, you know what, I'm gonna disown you. That's it. I don't care about you anymore. Which is also what schools do. Schools actually do this.
School disown them?
They don't disown them. They can't really disown them. But they say, you know what? You don't want to be in my class. You can leave. So they won't. They're not, as loving as family. Of course, they can't be. So with her, her family kept an open line of communication with her. So her father told her, like, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, it's never too late to come back. You can always repent to Allah. Allah is the most merciful. He will forgive you, and so will we. So, and from time to time, he would slowly just send her quotes and like this. And one day she just started really thinking about it, and she just came back. She was like, what am I doing? So it's as simple as when they're growing up to instill the faith, and also for families to keep an open line of communication.
This is a very, very good example, right? So it means, like, right from the beginning when you were talking about self-esteem, so moving from the elementary school to the high school. So if you have a strong self-esteem, then you won't feel as uncomfortable or unsecure or unsafe in the high school, right? As you would if you don't have a strong belief. So if you have a strong belief and you understand the reasons behind your being differently dressed or behind your differently doing other things, so that gives you some self-confidence. And then fast forward, if you, for instance, for some reasons end up in a bad situation, so what brings you out of that is again strong faith, right? So I'm going to do a full video on this one, but just to give you an idea, and particularly for those parents who are watching this and whose kids are going to the high school, and even if they are in the elementary school, the most important thing from Islamic perspective is first to have a very, very strong faith. So if you have strong roots here, that becomes a foundation, right? So up to 7 years at least, you inculcate the strong faith that you have a creator, and you're not wearing this hijab because of me or because of your mom or because of the culture and everything. This is just an example, but other things as well. This is because of your creator, right? And because of a way of life. So that's the foundation, and then on that foundation you make the next layer, and the next step is kind of teaching them Islam, the practice, right? How you practice salat and how you do zakat and Ramadan and fasting and everything, right? And then when that happens, most of the time what we ignore is the excellence, right? So it's Iman, Islam, and Ihsan, right? So they can taking your skills and your knowledge and your practice of the deen and everything to excellence, right? That's the most important part that we ignore in our teachings and the way we raise our children. But this is the most important thing. And your story tells me, the stories that you told me about your friends, is that in most cases the strong foundation helped them come out of the darkness, right, to the light. So from the society and the systems perspective, there is of course harm reduction strategies and approaches, right? But if a kid doesn't want to come back, there's nothing nothing in the system that would bring them out of that darkness, unless something bad happens and the child ends up in the hospital or in jail, right?
Like a shock.
Shock, and then if he ends up in jail, right? There's no other way. They have to put him in jail. So from the system perspective, there's nothing there to help the child unless the child makes a U-turn and then seeks support, right? But from the school perspective, before the child goes to that extreme, what is it that the school can do to protect or support those children?
So one thing I would recommend is I haven't seen in schools any courses. When we come into grade 9, I haven't seen any courses about self-esteem or how to deal with bullies or how to deal with, just knowing yourself. Who am I? I feel like maybe if in grade 9, when you first enter high school, they did a short, even a 1-day, 2-day program about that, not only for the students but also for the teachers.
So that
about different cultures.
So that they don't call a hijab a turban, right?
Yeah, and so that they're aware.
Yeah. All right. So that's cultural sensitization and cultural awareness and diversity awareness and understanding. That's critical both for the students and for the teachers. But that can't be just a one-time thing, right? It needs to be part of the whole system, so that it's kind of constantly reminded, so that there is more awareness, more understanding about the difference, that if somebody is different, it doesn't mean that that's wrong or evil, right? So and then among the children, the youth, other youth at the high school, what did you notice that just stood out for you that would give the children from minority groups that feeling of exclusion? Was there anything that you noticed in those kids?
So there's also another thing that's very important with the teachers being aware is that they can feel as though the child is perhaps misbehaving in the month of Ramadan, where a child is fasting. Not even child, they're young adults. So young adult is fasting and they can't drink water or eat. So I remember a friend a friend's brother. He was in grade 9, and he was there was gym class, so the teacher was making them run like 5 laps or something, and he was fasting, so he can't drink water, and it was the morning time, and so he told the teacher, "I'm fasting, and it's a religious thing. I'm fasting, and I just want to sit out for just the running." And so the teacher told him. The teacher first of all forced him to do the laps, and then was forcing him to drink water because I don't think it was the fault of the teacher. It's because the teacher was unaware, and then the teacher called him a terrorist, which then the teacher was just saying, "Oh, I was saying tear a strip," and so
So and then I remember from that incident that the teacher was kind of adamant and saying that no, the child was wrong, he could drink water, right? So the teacher had no clue about the Muslim practice of Ramadan and fasting. So my question was about the behavior of the majority children. How do they treat children from minority groups differently?
So I remember in my elementary school, which was predominantly 99.9% white students, the teachers, which I'm pretty sure this is strongly frowned upon, is that the teachers always have favorite students. And even in high schools where there's more cultural diversity, I've never seen a teacher whose favorite student is someone from a minority group, particularly a hijabi student. It's usually the blonde girls, blue eyes. It's usually those students that are the teacher's pet or the teacher's favorite.
And then that trickles down, right? So the way the teachers treat children, right? It trickles down to the children and other students as well. So then they treat minority
and
kids
it may be some subconscious on the teacher's part, but it's the little things that are noticed by us students.
Yeah, and that's what we have noticed in the racism as well, that most of the people who display that racist attitude, right, they don't have a clue, but just subconsciously they treat people from that minority culture different, or they consider them a notch inferior, or consider themselves or others a notch superior. Any other thing that you remember that could be a lesson for other kids?
Yeah, so in different types of neighborhoods in the city, especially like the Ridgemont neighborhood, the Cedarwood neighborhood, it could also be Ritchie neighborhood. So the younger elementary kids walking down the street, they see the high school kids. Of course, they look up to the high school kids. So they see, how are the high school kids? And especially in those areas, it's, the boys that are sagging their pants, or, smoking a cigarette, all that gang activity. And why do they lead to that? And I believe that that's just how they're raised. That's what they're exposed to at that age. So in those neighborhoods, it's more about what their exposure is. So for that, a solution could be, and I strongly suggest this, is for them to have community centers especially for Muslim youth, just because it could be like a place where Muslim friends get together, maybe do homework or have activities together, and so that their friends from a young age and their community, instead of their home, their outside world or their outside safe place could be good friends that are Muslim, and a community center. Again, it could be a center.
Or an activity within the community center, right?
It could be an activity. So then when they grow up, they'll always have that place to rely back to, instead of having to rely on gangs and friends like that.
And why is it so? I just wanted to know your perspective, that most of the kids in the gangs and drugs world are those who are victims of homicide, or who are the aggressors and perpetrators of those crimes are Muslims.
So again, I think it comes back to self-esteem, because it's one thing. Nobody joins those fake. Majority of people I've seen in high school pretending to be a gangster are just doing it for the show. And
They're
when
not
you
real
start,
gangsters.
And when you start just doing it for the show, you want to make it look more real and more real. And I'm telling you, this is 80% of them.
And then ultimately you end up there.
That's where you end up, because it goes one step at a time, and all of them are just doing it for the show. I personally don't think there's real gangs in cities like Ottawa. It's just a show.
The wannabe gangs.
Yeah.
And then the siblings, the younger ones, look up to their senior ones,
Yeah.
the older ones, right? And then they learn from them, and they try to follow the same trend. But again, in most cases, then their parents are very good people, but their children end up dying because of the turf wars, right? So why is it so that the parents are so good and they're practicing their deen, but their children are going on a tangent and end up either killing or dying?
And I've seen those parents. I've seen how those parents are. Of course, I haven't seen all, but it's that those parents are so good. They're so knowledgeable, but they don't instill it into their children. They're more like aggressive. Like, do this, pray. Why are you not praying? They don't really take the time to sit down
teach them.
and teach them
To
the
have
meaning
strong
behind
roots.
it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So that's one thing, and probably that's a big gap, right? Because did you see any program or activity for youth in the Muslim centers? The activities that you are suggesting that they should be offering in the community centers.
I haven't seen any, and it's very important as well, because a lot of kids also, they just get bored. For people that have come out of the ditch, so for someone that comes out of the ditch, it's so easy to fall back in, because it takes that one person, seeing that one old person at the grocery store, that one person to ask you, hey, where have you been? What's up with you?
Yeah,
It takes that one thing. So for those people especially, they need to do something with their time. They're not just going to sit at home all day and avoid these people. They need activities. They need activities with people they can relate to. They need activities where they can keep themselves busy, but also keep themselves healthy and in line with their goals.
So it seems that there are two challenges. One, there are not good enough activities for the Muslim youth, right? Number two, that knowledge translation is not happening the way it should happen, right? So whether they're parents or whether they're religious leaders, one, they're not organizing the type of activities which the youth can be receptive to, or number two, they don't develop that type of a specific content or activities where the youth would learn the basics and have a very strong faith and kind of absorb that understanding and knowledge of the deen, right? And that's a huge challenge. So I think I'll leave it at this, unless you have some other lesson that you'd like to share with the parents or with the children who are in high school these days.
So for anyone in high school, I recommend, if I could go back to high school, I would go to high school and wear the same thing every single day and not wear a single drop of makeup on my face, because those people don't matter at all. Once you leave high school, it's a whole new world. Nobody cares about anyone from high school, and even while you're in high school, the only thing that's going to support your future is your grades. You're only going there to build your future. And those 4 years of your high school are going to have an impact on your future life for the rest of your life. So for students, as I recommend, and also nobody cares about you. Nobody cares about what you're wearing. Nobody cares if you look nice. It's all temporary. Even if someone tells you look good, it means nothing. They're going to forget about it the next day. And you're not going to get any reward from someone telling you look good. And no one's going to shame you for wearing the same thing every day for a whole year.
Because everyone is absorbed in his or her own self, right? They're so consumed in themselves that they don't care about. But everyone thinks that the whole world is just looking at them and judging them and weighing them and giving them value or devaluing them. And that misconception, that misunderstanding lead them into all those problems. So thank you so much, Misha, for this help, and hope the parents and youth learn some valuable lessons from this. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum.